Welcome back.
Hello.
To you, the learner, we are so glad you're here with us for this custom-tailored deep dive.
Yes, absolutely.
Today, we're dissecting a really comprehensive Wikipedia article that chronicles the complete trajectory of the Royal Air Force.
The RAF.
Right, the RAF. Now, if you track military aviation, you probably already know their legacy. Your mind probably goes straight to the Battle of Britain, maybe the iconic silhouette of a Spitfire.
Or the precision flying of the Red Arrows.
Exactly. But the reality of the modern force is vastly different from that historical perception.
It really is.
Today's RAF is actively fighting drone wars, they're standing up a dedicated space command, and as of a major announcement in 2025, they are returning to the nuclear strike business.
After a decades-long hiatus, which is a profound evolution, I think the most effective way to frame our discussion today is to view this not merely as a timeline of aircraft, but, well, as a study of how a nation projects power.
Power and influence, yeah.
Right. We're looking at how a legacy military institution adapts to an ever-changing geopolitical landscape. When the tech changes or the adversary evolves, an organization of this size has to radically reinvent itself.
Or risk immediate obsolescence. Okay, let's unpack this. To understand why the RAF is leaning so heavily into next-generation tech today, we actually have to look at the philosophy that established it in the first place.
The ordnance.
Yeah, April 1st, 1918, the Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Naval Air Service are merged.
Right in the middle of the First World War.
Exactly. Now, here is a surprising fact from the source material. You might assume this merger created the world's first independent air force.
It's a common misconception.
It is.
Yeah.
But the Finnish Air Force actually beat them to the punch by a few weeks.
March 1918.
Yep, Finland got there first.
That's a brilliant piece of trivia. But the sheer scale of the RAF's creation is what reshaped modern warfare. The merger was heavily driven by the Smuts Report.
Jan Smuts, the South African statesman.
That's the one. In 1917, Smuts recognized something highly progressive. He saw that air power could no longer just be treated as an auxiliary thing for the Army or the Navy.
It needed its own strategic vision.
Exactly. The sky was a completely new domain of conflict. And following the Allied victory in World War I, the newly formed RAF emerged as the largest air force in the world.
The absolute biggest. And that institutional experience was basically the only thing standing between the UK and a land invasion 2 decades later.
World War II.
Right, during the Battle of Britain in 1940. You have the RAF acting as the ultimate defensive shield against the German Luftwaffe.
A numerically superior Luftwaffe, I might add.
Oh, massively superior. But the RAF pushed their doctrine to the absolute breaking point. They relied on radar networks and the sheer endurance of those fighter pilots in Spitfires and Hurricanes
to deny Germany the air superiority they needed for an invasion. The strategic importance of that air campaign is unparalleled. It was a war of attrition fought in the skies.
Total exhaustion.
Total exhaustion. High attrition rates. But the tactical brilliance of those squadrons prompted Winston Churchill to make his famous address in August 1940.
The few.
Yes, he distilled it into that famous line, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few."
Gives you chills.
It does. It shows how a specialized group of aviators can alter the geopolitical trajectory of a war.
But the strategy wasn't purely defensive, right? This is where we get into Bomber Command.
The strategic bombing campaign.
Right, against Germany. You look at the heavy bombers, mostly the Avro Lancaster, and you see this distinct split in tactics.
Precision versus area bombing.
Exactly. On one side, you have highly specialized precision tactics, the most famous being the Dam Busters raid.
Number 617 Squadron.
Yep, using those bouncing bombs to cripple German infrastructure.
Yeah.
Incredible technical achievement. But simultaneously, the RAF was conducting devastating nighttime area bombing of cities like Hamburg and Dresden.
It was an uncompromising total war doctrine. The calculus of area bombing was designed to dismantle German industrial capacity and break civilian morale.
It remains a heavily scrutinized campaign even today.
It does. It highlights a complex era where the sheer destructiveness of the technology outpaced precision targeting. But as World War II ended, the existential threat shifted.
Instantly, from fascism in Europe to the ideological divide of the Cold War. And right as that transition happens, the historical record throws us an incredible aha moment.
The 1948 Arab-Israeli War.
Yes. In 1948, the RAF actually engaged in combat against both Egyptian and Israeli forces.
At the same time.
At the same time, they lost aircraft to both sides. It just illustrates how chaotic the end of the British Empire was.
It was an incredibly volatile period, but the cornerstone of their Cold War role wasn't just managing the twilight of the empire, it was the nuclear deterrent.
The ultimate strategic responsibility.
Right. Initially, the RAF held Britain's strategic nuclear deterrent via the V-bomber fleet. They were the primary delivery mechanism.
Armed with British nuclear gravity bombs.
Exactly. But maintaining that strategic posture from a static airfield becomes vulnerable as enemy technology advances.
Which is why, in 1969, the strategic role was handed over to the Royal Navy's submarines. Submarines offered survivability that an airbase simply couldn't.
That is a crucial shift.
Yeah.
The RAF did maintain a tactical nuclear role, though.
Right, using the WV.177 gravity bombs on their Tornado strike aircraft. And they kept that role right up until 1998.
They did. But even as they handed over the strategic nuclear umbrella, their conventional operations never stopped.
They were busy.
Very. The Berlin airlift in 1948, the Malayan emergency, the Suez crisis.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Let's talk about the Falklands War in 1982.
A masterclass in logistics.
It completely redefines their capabilities. They had to operate out of Ascension Island in the mid-Atlantic.
Flying the longest combat missions in history up to that point.
And the integration with the Royal Navy was unprecedented. You even had RAF pilots cross-trained flying Royal Navy Sea Harriers.
Off the decks of aircraft carriers.
Right. In fact, the highest scoring pilot of the entire Falklands War was an RAF pilot, Dave Morgan.
The Falklands exposed the absolute necessity for long-range logistics and air-to-air refueling, and that proved vital when the Cold War ended.
Because the Soviet Union collapsed.
Exactly. The anticipation of a massive land war in Europe just evaporated. The RAF's focus had to shift entirely to expeditionary operations.
Rapidly deploying combat power anywhere on the globe. And we see the results of that post-Cold War shift immediately.
The Gulf War.
Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya.
And Operation Shader, the fight against ISIS.
The stress of constant overseas deployment over those decades is just staggering.
The wear and tear on the fleet and the personnel was immense. But we also have to recognize their non-combat roles.
The humanitarian and peacetime operations.
Right. The logistical infrastructure needed to drop a bomb is the same infrastructure used for a rapid airlift.
Like Operation Pitting in 2021.
The Afghan evacuation.
Exactly. They airlifted 15,000 people out of Kabul in just 2 weeks. Then there was the 2023 Sudan evacuation and all those COVID-19 relief flights.
Transporting patients and vaccines domestically.
Domestically, yeah. Speaking of domestic roles, there was a big shift in 2015 regarding the famous UK search and rescue helicopter service.
The yellow helicopters.
Right. The RAF fully privatized that service, handing it over to civilian contractors.
A clear move to streamline the budget and focus strictly on defense. And speaking of domestic defense, we need to discuss a significant incident from June 2025.
Yes, the incident at RAF Bryce Norton. We need to cover this strictly by the facts reported in the source material.
Absolute impartiality is required here, yes.
The facts are these. In June 2025, pro-Palestinian activists broke into the RAF Bryce Norton base.
The service's primary transport hub.
Correct. Once inside, they vandalized military aircraft. This infiltration was immediately deemed a national security risk.
Following the event, the group claiming responsibility, Palestine Action, was prescribed as a terrorist organization by the UK government.
And as a direct consequence of that breach, the Ministry of Defense launched a massive security review of all military bases across the UK.
What's fascinating here is how the RAF is managing these physical, on-the-ground security challenges while simultaneously executing a massive technological transformation.
The 2025 and 2026 hardware revolution.
The entire fleet architecture is being overhauled right now.
Okay, let's talk about the biggest news first. The return of the nuclear mission.
A massive policy reversal.
Huge. Remember, they gave up the tactical nuclear role in 1998. But at the 2025 NATO summit, Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced the acquisition of 12 nuclear-capable F-35A Lightning stealth fighters by 2030.
Returning a nuclear role to the RAF for the first time in 27 years.
It's a massive shift. But alongside those manned stealth fighters, we have the drone fleet.
The shift toward uncrewed aircraft is accelerating. The old Reapers are gone.
Replaced by the new General Atomics Protector RG1 drones.
Right, they officially entered service in mid-2025. And this is a huge leap. The Protector can fly in unsegregated civilian airspace, and he'd stay on station for nearly 2 days.
40 hours of flight time without needing a pilot to sleep or eat.
It alters the entire landscape of surveillance and strike capabilities.
And shifting gears to helicopters, we have the absolute latest news from our March 2026 update.
The rotary wing shakeup.
Yes. The legacy Puma helicopters, which were incredibly old, were finally retired with a farewell flypast in March 2025.
Right.
And then, exactly a year later, on March 2, 2026, the Ministry of Defense officially selected their replacement under the new medium helicopter program.
The Leonardo AW149.
That's the one. It fills a critical capability gap with open architecture digital systems,
Which allows it to network with all these other modern assets on the battlefield.
Exactly. And speaking of the conventional fleet, we should briefly touch on the Typhoon FGR-4s.
The backbone of their combat capability.
They are. We saw them shooting down Iranian drones in 2024.
Very effectively.
You've also got the Poseidon MRA-1 for submarine hunting.
Plugging a major vulnerability there.
Definitely. Though it is worth noting that the Wedgetail early warning aircraft has faced significant delays. It is now expected later in 2026.
Procurement delays are always a friction point. But even with all this focus on fifth-generation stealth and digital drones, the RAF is still deeply anchored by its culture.
Oh, the culture is so distinct and quite quirky, honestly. Why does an Air Force use naval ranks?
Like wing commander or group captain.
Right. It seems totally counterintuitive.
It was a deliberate political choice back in 1918. When they merged the military and naval aviation branches, they were worried the Army would just dominate the new force.
So they use naval-sounding ranks to create a cultural buffer.
Exactly, to emphasize they were a co-equal service.
That makes perfect sense. And that desire for a distinct identity also explains their symbols, like the iconic concentric ring roundel.
The red, white, and blue circles on the wings.
Right. They adapted that from the French during WWI to avoid friendly fire, because the original Union Jack markings looked too much like the German Iron Cross from a distance.
A very practical change that became globally recognized, just like their motto.
Per ardua ad astra.
Through struggle to the stars.
It's beautiful, and they display that ceremonial pride so well.
The red arrows, for instance.
Flying the BAE Hawk in that trademark Diamond 9 formation, unmistakable.
You also have the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight keeping the history alive.
And the King's Color Squadron. This is unique. They actually guard Buckingham Palace in place of the army.
A profound display of institutional parity.
Definitely.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, everything we've looked at today, the origins, the Cold War operations, the expeditionary shift, and this massive 2025-2026 tech overhaul, it shows that military institutions must constantly reinvent themselves.
To survive.
Yes, from biplanes to F-35 stealth fighters.
And from domestic defense to the newly established UK Space Command. It really is a living example of how rapidly technology and geopolitics change. So, to you listening, why should you care? Because the world is shifting under our feet right now.
The pace of technological change is unrelenting.
So what does this all mean?
It leaves us with a lingering question. We talked about Winston Churchill famously praising human pilots during the Battle of Britain.
The few?
Right. But as the RAF increasingly relies on the UK Space Command, remote-controlled Protector drones, and AI data systems, who will the few be in the future?
Will the heroes of tomorrow's conflicts be sitting in a cockpit?
Or will they be sitting at a computer terminal miles away from the sky? It's something we invite you to mull over on your own.
A completely new kind of pilot.
Wow.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We will see you next time.